Right,
Sorry, Jesse's.
oh my
Oh,
God.
now it's recording. It's recording now. Okay, it said it to us. Jesse is also from the events committee and is my handler today because this is my first time running an event. So yeah, thanks, Jesse. All right, we're good. We're good. Okay, cool. We're recording. Now introduce yourself, Sarah. Thank you. Oh, can we hear Sarah? Oh, there we go. Now we can hear you. All right,
Okay,
I'm
there's
gonna
some
mute
issues with
myself.
the screen sharing. Hang on a second. I'm gonna.
Yep, take your time. Uh, we'll make it all work. Uh, is it like muting because they're sharing the screen? How do I unmute you? Ask to unmute. Let's see if that works. Hey,
Here we go.
okay, there we
Perfect.
go.
Okay,
Woo!
yeah,
All
I'm
right,
not entirely sure how that was interacting,
all
but
right.
cool.
Wow, it's scenes. Okay, I'm gonna mute myself, and it's all yours. Take it away, Sarah.
Thank you for your patience. I'm scared of Zoom. Um, yeah, wow, it's Zines, Advanced Zine Workshop. I'm a trad artist. You can tell by how shit I am at making PowerPoints. So, wow. So a little bit about me. My name's Sarah Lund. I'm a multidisciplinary artist from Otahi, Christchurch, Aotearoa, New Zealand. Um, I do cut paper work, comics, obviously, since I'm here. I do lino cut printing and zine making, among other things. I also run the local Zine Fest. Zines are very, very important to me. I think it's really good to have an accessible medium that anyone can make. You can do things that are very, very simple. You can do things that are very complicated. It's not necessarily dependent on your artistic skill or how much money or education that you have. And that's just the sort of stuff that I want to take into my practice and to uh, encourage amongst everyone else. So that's sort of what this is about, except it's taking the simple zines and making them into more of, I guess, an art object, which I think they are already, but I mean, you'll see what I mean. So, this is what my art looks like. I bring this up not to brag, but because the zines that I make are very intense, and I don't necessarily expect you guys to make zines that intense. I'm insane about this. You don't have to be. Cool. Um, so, I assume that everyone here knows what a zine is. You know, just a small publication, so like usually a small booklet of some sort, uh, not an anthology of art book stuff, but I won't get into that here. Uh, um, as I said before, I think that all zines are art objects, but we can approach them in a more intentional way. So, where we marry the form to the content and the entire presentation becomes an experience, I guess. And
Hey,
those are the
Sarah.
zines that I really enjoy. Yep.
We have a request. The app.zoomus is sharing your screen and audio. Would you mind clicking the hide button so we can see the rest of your slide? Some
Oh,
information is getting
sorry.
hidden there.
There we go. It's
Thank
a silly
you.
joke, so that's all right.
We would have missed the silly joke.
I
Thank you
know.
very much, Saltian, for bringing that up for us.
Sorry about that. Oh man. Okay. Where was I? Oh, completely lost train of thought. Um, yeah, basically this is about making them into art objects and uh, making zines more intentionally, I guess, from an artistic standpoint, uh, which I think is cool and I want to encourage. So I've got a bunch of examples. Some of them are mine, some of them are other people's. I'll be talking about mine and the intent behind them and the way in which I constructed them. And then I have some examples of other zines that I like from other people. And then I have sort of walking through my process of making one of my high effort zines. So, what I tend to do, we have Zine Fests every year, and I tend to try to make a few sort of like quote unquote low effort zines where it's just dumping a bunch of shit into an InDesign file and printing it. They're very simple, easy to fold, and then doing at least one high effort one where I'm trying not to cry at 3 a.m. the night before trying to put it together. I'm sure you guys are familiar. But yeah, so I think there's two ways of conceptualizing, oh my god, conceptualizing a zine, figuring out how to make it in the first place. So there's contents first, where you have an idea, you want to express this idea, and so the form sort of follows that. You make it, I guess, what am I trying to say here? You have a certain amount of text, and that's what you fit into the zine. The zine is structured to fit that and around that. And then there's the opposite, where you have a really cool idea of how you want to structure the scene. For instance, the bottom one here is one of my, well, they're both mine. So the plaid shirt zine, I really wanted to make a zine that looked like a shirt. And then I've got a video of it shortly. You'll see I broke it down into small chunks of text that fit inside of the structure of this, so it would all mesh together that way. Yeah. And, you know, I think making any sort of zine, it's kind of a marriage of the two of them. Uh, you know, it's a bit of a balance. So this is very simplified, but, you know, I find this helpful to approach things with. So you're going to show up. Here we go. So here's a contents first zine that I made called But It Remembers. So the idea behind this one is I have a character who I will eventually make a comic with, and I would argue that this is a comic zine, even though I kind of struggle to think of it that way because it doesn't necessarily have a character on the page except in the narration. So I have this character, and the idea of her is that she is sort of stuck in memories and this sort of PTSD style thing where you know you can't escape this thing that's happened to you, this time, this place, and I saw this structure in, you know, like my journey through the internet, and I was like, oh, that would be so perfect, and figured out how to make it and how it fits really well into a booklet, just like folding out like this. And I made it in such a way that the narrative actually ends on the title. So the text, I'll just play this again, let it loop. Yeah, so the entire structure is sort of that as you go through it, this was a home once. Oh god, I can't even remember the order the text is in. Every last inch so familiar. I don't remember the way out anymore. You will forget me here, but it remembers. So you can put the zine down, you can put the narrative down, but she's sort of still stuck in it, is the idea behind this one. So, yeah, that was, so, you know, it's still very sympathetic to the form, I think, and, you know, keeping that in mind. But this was definitely conceptualized contents first. And the way that I made it as well, which I'll get into later when I talk about making zines, I learned actually in one of the Zine Fest workshops how to use lino to print stuff, and I think it's a really sort of like affordable medium. It's pretty easy, at least it was for me, to pick up, and it's really good for not so much mass producing things, but producing things faster than, like you can draw them type thing. And so I thought that was a cool medium to make this in as well. And I think that makes it more interesting looking and more, I don't know, more personal, really, hand making it rather than printing it. But that might just be me uh, being married to being a traditional artist. But yeah, so you're gonna, there we go. So here's the plaid shirt scene. So this is a structure first scene. Um, yeah, so we'll have a look at this one instead. So this one, I was very, very intentional with wanting it to look like a shirt that I own. So all of these buttons are, I think I made them by hole punching some paper. So they're all individually glued on. The back panel of the shirt, so it, again, on the back where no one's going to be looking at, it still looks like the shirt is sewn together and structured. That also had the effect of hiding where I attached the arms. So it's all sort of fitting together in that way. And, it's got pockets, there's care instructions underneath the tag, which is like physically sewn on, because I wanted it to look, as realistic is probably the wrong word, but, like I wanted it to feel like the shirt. Um, so I'm glad you appreciate the detail, Jesse. But this one was also lino printed. I printed the pattern onto the blue paper, and it's on both sides of the paper, and I had to sort of like mask it off and work intentionally because, as you can see here, the inside of the zine isn't printed. Um, but yeah, as I was saying earlier, all of the text here is sympathetic to the form. So I kept writing until I hit basically the limit of what could fit into those boxes. Um, so yeah, that's, kind of where I'm going with it. I mean, there's kind of, oh yes, Hester. So all of those text boxes can be read in any order. They're all sort of related to each other, but they're not like dependent on each other. So you can sort of attack this one in whatever way you want, which I think is interesting as well. But yeah. Um, okay. So here's some zine examples. They're just sort of like some zines I really like. This one is actually my favorite zine. It's one of the first ones that I ever bought, and it's very simple. It's like a traditional zine structure where it's photocopied. You can see how bashed it is from me looking at it all the time. And the way it's structured is very, very simple. Um, it's a zine about, I didn't really talk about what the plaid shirt zine was about, but anyway, this one is somebody talking about their chronic illness. And all of the text is this sort of unstructured, small pieces of paper sandwiched in between the larger pages, which are photos of the bush and forest. And to me, the scene feels like you're sort of inside this forest looking at this person's thoughts. And it feels a lot deeper and more all encompassing than a regular zine where the text takes up all of the page and there's sort of like images to the side would. And I really, really like it. So the way it's structured, the smaller pages aren't cut into the larger ones via slits. They're actually bound into it. So, you have a set of 4 pages when you're, how do I describe this? When you're
Like the signature
binding them.
of the paper.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's the one. Yeah, so it just alternates the larger pages and the smaller ones. So there's sort of a gap page in the very middle where it's just a photo, um, because you know, realistically that would be too much text in the middle. But also it kind of almost gives you like a rest stop or a break in the middle of it, and I think it's really beautiful that it does that personally. And like, I'm fully aware that I'm taking these very very seriously, and letting the sort of like small amount of fine art study that I've done take over a little bit. But I think it's important to appreciate these forms that people would see as sort of like low art in the same way that you would fine art. And I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here because we all make comics, we all know what that's like, and not being taken seriously, or you know people acting as if our art isn't important and considered. And I think it is, even if it's not necessarily intentional by the artist, which I do think it was here. But yeah.
The zine you just showed, even without reading it, I feel like I'm having an emotional reaction just to the actual structure of it. So totally take
Oh.
it seriously.
I'm so glad. I first read it, I was studying graphic design, and it completely changed my relationship with how physical media is structured. It really had an effect on me, and I really like it. It doesn't have an author anywhere on it, and every day I'm upset about that. I want to talk to the person who made it, but I would have gotten it probably over 10 years ago now. Right. Good night, me. Okay, so the examples that I have are like getting increasingly more complex as we go. So we'll just sort of ease into it a little bit. So this one is a pretty simple way of folding this together. This one's a comic, and I really like it. So it just sort of gets bigger as you unfold it, and you see more and more. Excuse me. Oh gosh. There we go. It gets bigger and bigger as you unfold it, and has this sort of narrative about uncovering these bones. And it's very very effective, and it involves the reader and unfurling the narrative, which I really like. And turning it over, you can see how simple it is to construct. It's very simple folds, but it's also not the sort of thing you expect, I think, when you pick up a zine, and I really like that. There's another comic from that artist. I can't remember if it's the next slide or the one after, but you know, their work is very, very good. Ooh, there we go. So this one's really cool as well. Um, that one's by Megan Lim. So this one is structured as a, a takeaway menu, and it's like this beautiful Rezo print. Um, and then if you open it the whole way up, it's sort of got a comic about the people making the food and the family who runs it, um, which is really, really cool.
We have a question. Is there a good place to get tutorials on some of these one-page zine folds from Boney Hag?
Oh, yes. I have good news. I cover that in my little how I've made my zine. Well, before I get into my how I've made my zines bit. So that's coming. Not strictly how to make these ones, but how I find ideas and inspiration for this sort of stuff. So that would be very relevant, I think. Um, and honestly, if this is going up on YouTube, I think hopefully the way that I've done these videos, I'll just play this one again for reference. I mean, I'm a very visual learner personally, but I feel like these ones, if you see the way they unfold on video, it's fairly easy to recreate them um, in their structure, which is quite cool. So this one's just folded inwards to the middle twice. Um, so yeah, like you can see that it's very effective, not strictly a traditional way of folding zines, but it works really, really well. But yes, I just really like the narrative in this one and how it sort of like intersperses with the food and where the foods come from. And yeah, just a really good one. So, oh, did we not have a title on that one? Oh my god. Okay, so this is another comic from Erin Roseberry who did the Unfolding Dinosaur Bones one. Um, and this one is a bit more complicated in the way that it is constructed, and I think it's really cool. It's another narrative like But It Remembers, where it just loops. So I think this one's also Rezo printed actually. Um, a fair few of these are borrowed from my girlfriend who has access to all of the really cool Rezo printing Australian zines that I don't have, so that's really cool.
What a great girlfriend perk.
I know, amazing. Um, thank you, Hester, who is in here right now. But yeah, I mean, again, pretty simple. I'm sure constructing this took more time than you would expect because they always do. But yeah, I just think it's really interesting. It's really cool, and I'm a huge fan of looping narratives like that, which is also has the handy benefit of if you're bad at coming up with endings, you don't have to. So you know, something to think about. But oh, where are we going? There we go. Oh Jesus, why have we? Okay, the slideshow is acting a little strange. Anyway, this is one of my girlfriend's scenes. So, uh, it's this really cool bat. I've also bashed this one to death, so the back part has come off, but that was attached with a split pin. It's got instructions for the contents of the zine inside this little tag, um, which is quite cool. The inside of the zine is a bunch of temporary tattoos and also like a little summoning circle to put them onto. Um, the bat itself was created out of one, technically two pieces of paper for the pink inner as well, but it's all one piece, so it all just folds together. Um, and the bat's head folds down to hide the split pin, which is quite clever, I think, in the way that it's constructed. Um, Hester, would you like to talk about what that one was made for? Oh, we might be having mic problems.
They say, yes, I'd love
Oh,
to.
there we
Oh,
go.
there we
Oh,
go.
good, we can hear you.
Figured it out in the end. Yes, so this was made as part of a yearly Halloween zine swap that's managed by the Sticky Institute, which is in Victoria, Australia. Um, and For this one, it was constructed around the time of Sarah's big plaid shirt zine, and I got so inspired by all the weird folding that Sarah was doing. It's like I want to have a go at that. And so a lot of this was very much a structure first uh, zine. But I was also thinking of structurally, I was thinking of those little voucher books that you can get where you rip them out and use them, and that's sort of where it started. And then I found temporary tattoo paper, and it went on from there. So it sort of came from a very structure first perspective of wanting to be sort of interesting and tactile and hopefully something that you actually use the contents of. But I don't know if anyone was brave enough to. um, but yeah, so that was that little scene.
Thank you, Hester. But yeah, I think that's really cool. And I think it's also super interesting to talk to zine makers about the intentions behind their work and how they made it. Which is a really cool thing about going to Zine Fest in person. So you actually get to do that and interact with the people who are creating work. Um, but yes, so that one's cool. And I also, as I said, I really like how the design is sympathetic to the structure of it. So if we just play this again, the split pin to hold on the instructions is hidden behind the bat's head. And, the bat wings come together and hook in with one of the claws to close. It's a really well considered design, and I really like that.
You said it's a packet of temporary tattoos. Is that just like a paper type you can get?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. So you just print onto it, and then they work like a regular temporary tattoo, where you just sort of like stick it on your arm with a wet cloth or what have you. And I'm guilty of not using any of these yet because it's so nice. I don't want to take it apart, but I should. I should.
Yes, it's a two-part situation. You get a printable sheet, and then you get a translucent bit of plastic with like basically dissolvable glue on it, and you just connect the two, and they're good to go. Really straightforward.
Oh, wow, cool. I had no idea. Thank you for letting me know that's possible. My brain is buzzing now.
Yes, so you can find many interesting objects at your local craft store. There's some really odd things that you can make when you really start looking, which is pretty cool. Okay, so here we come into the sort of like section where it's like how you find ideas, generate ideas, etc. Um, the internet is obviously really rife with AI. Google has gone down the shitter. It's really hard to find things now. And especially, I mean, I think we all know how social media prioritizes and deprioritizes creative work via algorithms. So to bypass that, I think if you're intentionally looking for work, it's really good to look at older mediums. So obviously, there's the library. Libraries have a lot of craft books, ideas for like, and this is very structure first as well, by the way. Um, I unfortunately don't have a magic bullet for how to come up with sort of like content first. And I feel like a lot of um, tutorials are more likely or more inclined to go with that way of thinking of things. But I'm very obsessed with making things in the structure. So that's what we're going to look at today. So again, library books, great. Craft blogs, also great because usually they have a very sort of like straightforward way of how to make what they're describing. There's also a bunch of stuff on YouTube, lots of YouTube tutorials, old and new. There's lots of bored old people who put together really, really great tutorials. So there's like this pop up channel here, which is fantastic. Um, I'm sure we've all seen the sort of like old infomercial meme of the woman going absolutely nuts over sponges. That sort of stuff, really great. Just introductions to new mediums you haven't thought of using before. Honestly, going to your local craft store and talking to the staff is quite interesting as well if you're brave enough. But yeah, if it looks janky and old internet, that's what we want to go with, really. The other way is like thinking of your own skills, what you've learned, how you can bring them into the medium. So this is one of my zines. I took a pottery course. I was quite average at it. Um, so I decided I wanted to make a zine that was about all of my weird, semi-failed pottery projects. So I put them in the zine with a little bit of text, about how I felt about them and stuff. That's fine. And then the way that I wanted to present them was I made these little guys sitting down to hold them, and I wanted to make them look like. There's a few viral photos that have gone around of people who've like made these beautiful sculptures with their like realistic faces and stuff, and then they've dropped them and how smushed their faces look. So I kind of sculpted faces on these little guys and then smushed them into the table so that would be revealed when you pick up the zine from on top of them, and then you have this object as well with the zine. So that sort of thing. Obviously, that's a very intense way of doing it, but just thinking about what adds to the message with your zine. So the other way, I'm a very visual learner. Uh, so stuff like just aimlessly searching on Google, or wandering through the craft store or the library can be quite hard for me. I prefer to have an example of what I want to do first. And Pinterest, unfortunately, is really, really good at giving you images of cool looking stuff that you want to look at. And, we know that it's infested with AI. It doesn't seem to have touched paper crafts too hard yet, which is nice. The other thing with Pinterest is that it's absolutely shit at sourcing stuff. So to get around that, obviously click the source that the image you've found comes from. In this case, it's a Tumblr. It didn't tell me anything about how this book was made. However, if you look in the suggestions, you can see other examples of that same fold, and you've got a name now. It's called Turkish map fold. So now we can Google what that is, how to make it. There's an example here on Pinterest of how to fold that together. So, like, if you know how to Google with Pinterest, basically, you can use it for your dark deeds without feeling too yucky about using the platform. The other thing that it's really, really good at linking you to with some of these paper crafts, it will take you to old scrapbooking bloggers. You will click a link, you will find a blog that was made in 2012, and that will give you everything that you need to know. That's what we want to do. It's ideal. So, going on from that, here's how I made my latest high effort zine, just as an example of how this process works. So, this one was structure first. As per the last search, I found Turkish map fold. I thought it was really, really cool, and I wanted to build something off of that. And I realized when you open it, it kind of explodes outwards. It gets bigger. So, decided to mine my life for content. A bunch of stuff had just happened to me. So I was like, cool, we'll talk about that. And I wanted to sort of color gradient the pages from the middle to the outside of the zine, so it looked like a full explosion when it was opened up. Excuse me. Oh, I've been talking a lot. Hester was actually the one who suggested having little shards of paper, so it was more like it had been exploded. So highly recommend talking to friends, family, loved ones, the extra ideas, other artists. It really came together. And so this little sketch on the page is actually a lie. I put it together for a workshop similar to this one. Every time I make a zine, I scribble everything on a whole bunch of tiny little bits of paper and they get scattered all the way across my office. Nothing like this. So more like this, where it's just like horrible pen doodles, thinking about what I'm going to do. So I've also got some sketches of the plaid shirt zine here, where it's similar. Um, sort of working out on the page how it was going to be structured. And I think that's, really important. So this is just figuring out the logistics of the shapes when I folded them together, and also the logistics of what I would need to cut out. So specifically, this part on the bottom here with, the glued over sleeves, the back and collar. So, the back and collar part of the shirt, the collar just folds down and it hides the attachment marks from the sleeves while still looking like a coherent sewn together shirt. So that was quite important to me, that you couldn't see any of the construction in the final zine as such. So I also wrote down measurements for each of the sizes, how things need to be folded. Unfortunately, what this doesn't have is the deranged layout that I had on my A4 pages for how I was printing them and cutting them, but that's fine. I worked out exactly how many zines I could make out of an A4 page, or like a packet of 24 pieces of paper or something. It was crazy. There was so much maths involved. I don't know. Oh yeah, there we go. 5 collars and arms per A4 page over on the right there. So there you go. And I think the back was 2 zines per page for like the main body of it. I don't know. Truly, I had entered the zone then. But, planning, yay. Doesn't have to look structured, just has to make sense to your deranged brain, really. So after that, I like to make a mock-up with just like printer paper. So from this one, I found out that for the explosion zine, I needed to have, like, if I wanted the bomb fuse, it could only be attached to one side of the cover because it would fold it over if I had it attached to both when you open the zine, which we didn't want. And I would just, I think for the test one, I just stapled the pages together, but I ended up sewing them because I think it looks nicer for the final product. And then here's the plaid shirt zine. So I've also got all of the measurements on. I probably figured out the measurements via making this mock-up, I think, because again, visual learner, it's a lot easier to visualize how these things work for me when I've put them together, I think. And so here's the back section where it's hiding the sleeves and fold marks on the sleeves for figuring out how long I wanted them to be, because it's a kind of awkward shape. And, I just think that's really useful when you're creating something structured like that. And then, because we've already seen the plaid shirt zine, here's the final of how the explosion zine turned out. So, got the little fuse. The front of it is lino printed on just as a stamp. The top is sewn together with black thread so it's not too visible. Corners rounded so it looks more like a bomb. And then you can see the effect of the gradient of the papers and the little shards being a different color. yeah, this one's a little bit depressing, as you can probably gather from the title. But
How linear is the text supposed to be read in this case, right? And like, what is sort of the process of writing in a nonlinear fashion?
yeah, so with this one, it's oh, I'm just trying to remember how I did it. I think each of the sort of well, I guess cardinal directions really. So like top, bottom, left, and right are sort of like loosely grouped together, but it's each of the segments is a separate thought. And when I was putting it together, it was approximately the same way that you would read things, where it's sort of top to bottom, left to right. Uh, but they don't necessarily need to be read that way. Like the whole thing comes together as a bit of like a narrative or a group of thoughts, regardless. Um, and I mean, you could say that that's sympathetic to it exploding, where it's like all of these pieces going in all these different directions. Although I'm sure that readers aren't necessarily thinking about that. Um, but yeah, so that's the sort of thing, I guess, that like I'm talking about, where each piece of it is. Why is that very fuzzy? Oh my gosh. Um, each piece of it is quite considered, and it's sort of like very the medium is the message type stuff as well. Uh, every part of it is sort of trying to reinforce what it's telling you, and just considering that when you are making zines, um, and thinking about how you want to structure things and what you're making, as well as having fun with it, of course. Like that's that's the other part of it, is like all of these things are really, really fun for me. I'm just sort of playing around, um, exploring the medium, and like I don't sort of profess these to be like huge important pieces of art. We're still getting a little bit silly with it, but I think it is nice to treat these as you would, again, like a fine art piece or something that's more serious, quote unquote. Yeah, but yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say on the topic. Hopefully that was helpful to everyone, especially the section about like idea generation and stuff.
We have
Um,
a question from Jesse. They say,
cool.
Sarah, do you keep most of your zines?
I do keep most of my zines. I have at least one copy of all of my own zines, and I also have an enormous box of zines from my local community and from other zine fests that I've been to. I keep meaning to build some sort of zine library, and I haven't yet, so they're all still in the box dungeon. But yeah, I do have quite a big collection.
I'm always fascinated to hear about how other zine freaks manage their collections. Would you mind elaborating on that?
It's not managed. I have a really weird memory where I can tell where in the strata of my piles things are. So I'm kind of okay at figuring out where each scene is in there, but that's not a good system for anyone else. Oh man.
We have a question from Oral Menace. How do you coordinate making copies of your more complex zines?
Okay, so for that, usually I will give myself a few days to make each of them, depending on what medium I'm using and what my skills are in the specific what we're using. But usually I have a fairly good sense spatially of how everything fits together in the zine. So, like for the plaid shirt zine, there's obviously multiple pieces involved with that. I think there are, I guess, technically 4 pieces. There's 2 sleeves, the back and the collar, and the main body of the shirt. So the main body of the shirt unfolds all the way. It's about the width of a piece of paper, and because it's not very tall, I could fit 2 on each sheet. And then I organized the other pieces into squares or rectangles. And I don't know if I'm explaining this very well. So like the shirt sleeves are the shape that they are because it meant that I could flip them upside down and make a rectangle, and that rectangle was 2 sleeves. And then I put however many of those, I think it was like 5 of those rectangles on a single sheet of paper, and 5 of the collar pieces on a single piece of paper. And then it was more simple maths as to how many pages I could print. I tend to make zines. Essentially, the number of zines that I make is how many I can logistically fit into a pack of colored paper that I buy for them. So I think I ended up making something weird like 12 or 13 of the plaid shirt zines because that's how many would fit. And other than that, I would have to, make twice as many to feel like I was justified buying that much paper and stuff. But yes, Hester, I adapted the form of the zine to what fit the page functionally. Like it's always trying to find a balance between what you can logistically make with the materials available to you and what you want to make. So, I feel like the size of paper, the amount of equipment available to you is always going to inform what you end up with.
Hester says, so you adapted the form of the zine to what fit the page best too, like a happy medium?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Don't know how well I'm explaining this. But yeah, so
I'm absorbing it. I think you're doing a wonderful job explaining this.
yeah.
Good job.
But yeah, it's the same thing with the But It Remembers zine. So I hand printed every single one of those, which was 8 prints per zine, I think. Yeah, one for each of the page sides and one for each of the floors, which took a very long time and I would not recommend. But
Jesse also has a question from a bit earlier ago. I didn't ask it because you were talking about the shirt, and I was wondering if you're going to bring it up on yourself. But they say, could you tell us about the tiny plaid shirt you made with the bigger one? And then they share an Instagram link to one of your posts showing off the plaid shirt scene.
oh yes, so that one was actually a gift for Hester. I'm sort of, I wouldn't say primarily, but a lot of the cut paper work that I do is miniature work, and so I kind of just really wanted to make a miniature version of the scene. So that's what that is.
How many miniature ones were you able to fit on a sheet of paper? Is that something
Oh my
you
gosh.
even figured out, or was it just sort of a single art object for Hester?
There was just a single one. I think I would probably be able to fit quite a few, like maybe 20 onto a single piece of paper. I would say it was quite small. Yes, one of these days I'll do a miniature zine. But yeah, does anybody else have any other questions that I can answer very cryptically and confusingly?
Jesse says, "What's been your favorite zine you've made?"
Oh man. Um that's a really good question. I have one that I haven't put up here because, like, I think I said at the start, I like to make a few sort of like lower effort zines, easier zines, and then I'll make a really intense zine, like a high effort one, every year. And honestly, I really, really like my high effort zines. I think the one that I like the most, though, is one of my low effort zines called Gnome Cringe Horseshoe Theory, where I talk about how people think gnomes are tacky and cringe, and how there's sort of like a spectrum there of people who unironically love gnomes and think they're the coolest shit ever. And it goes sort of bends around like a horseshoe. Horseshoe theory is stupid, but so is the scene. Um, and it bends all the way around to people who like ironically like gnomes, or they like performatively hate on gnomes, and how it's like you also care about the gnome, you're also cringe. It's a very stupid zine and I love it a lot, and there's an entire page of me talking about how Gnomeo and Juliet is a cinematic masterpiece, if that gives you an indication of what it's like.
I am a gnome lover. Gnomes are among my favorite of the Fae folk. Um, I don't want to rush us with the wrap up, but I do want to say that I just dropped a link to our co op survey in the chat. We would love to hear what everyone thought about this event, so that we can, uh, you know, figure out how to keep making great little workshops like this one. So yeah, please fill out that survey for. Oh, so I'm getting a phone call. Oh no, how unprofessional of me. One moment. There we go. I fixed it. I hung up. Um, yes. Yeah. So we'd love to hear that. We still have time. We didn't even hit the 80-minute mark that I have to warn people about. Not to stretch this out longer than it needs to be or whatever, but not rushing anyone into getting out of here quite yet. If Sarah is still open to answering questions, I'm still open to the questions happening. Yes.
Yeah, sure thing. I think we have one more question here from Hester, which is where did we go? Do you have a fold or technique or form you really want to put into a zine, or an idea that you're still looking for a form for? Um, I definitely do, and it's just completely exited my head. I think the thing that I've been most focused on recently with zines is that Turkish map fold, where I saw it ages ago and was desperately looking for something that I could do with it because I thought it was so cool and so impressive. Um, and then my life exploded. So I was like, awesome, I'll just mine that for art. But yeah, I mean, to be honest, with zines at the moment, I'm so run off my feet with actually running the zine fest that I don't have as much time as I'd like to make zines and to sort of table and things. But such is the life of an organizer. But yes, thank you all for coming. I really appreciate you guys showing up.
Yeah, thank you for running such a wonderful workshop with us. Michael Jefferson says, with the low versus high effort projects, do you ever feel like the small ones get in the way of the bigger ones?
I don't know about get in the way as such. Like usually with the low effort ones, I'm usually doing them via proper printing. And I try and get out ahead of printing all of my zines because I don't have a home printer, so I have to actually go to a print shop and get that done and do that a few days before whatever event I need them for. So that's usually okay. But there is one zine, and I'll see if I can scroll up enough to. In fact, what if I just escape out of here and go back manually? There we go. So the top zine here, I've made a little series of zines called Pictures of My Son Yawning, which are exactly what you would expect from that. And I always do author's photos of my cat yawning with copies of the zines, which is what this is. And those are by far and away my most popular zines. People do appreciate the high effort ones, but when people come to my table at ZineFest, they Oh yeah, nice, Jesse. Just immediately answers that question. Whoops. Um, yeah, when people come to my table, they will pick up pictures of my son yawning. They love it. They buy multiple copies. I know that people in the local library have used them to teach zine folding, which is a little bit scary. And I'm just like, I made this zine at 3 a.m., sleep deprived, in about 15 minutes. And this is my top seller, not the ones that I've spent actual time and effort on. And I'm just like, ah. But that's the way that things go and what appeals to people. So it's fine. I love sharing photos of my cat. So, so it goes.
There's something so nice about the sort of meditative flow state that comes from folding a stack of, those basic eightfold zines.
Oh,
Um,
yes, exactly.
do you find that you find a similar sense of flow from the more complicated zine manufacturing, or is it more of an active experience? Like, do you zone out while doing it and watching a thing, or are you very focused on making sure everything is right?
It really depends on how complex they are. So, like with the plaid shirt zine, I had to be quite intentional with folding because the measurements were quite precise to make it fold together properly. Um, and I had to cut all the corners on everything. Like the bottom of the shirt is rounded, and all of the sleeves cut very intentionally and stuff. Whereas with But It Remembers, everything's just being folded in half and glued together, which I could pretty much do in my sleep because of like the cut paperwork that I normally do. It's like a very simplified version of it. And the same with Explode. I stopped. I think I folded two Turkish map fold pages, and then I was like, "Why am I measuring these?" And started doing it by instinct, or like they're like halfway. Like you're just folding things in half over and over, stuff like that. I mean, you know, you get into a rhythm.
Thank you. We have another question from Jesse. Speaking of libraries, how do you envision zines in educational settings? Are there many places open to incorporating zines into their teachings? Oh, and in movement and activism work too. Yeah, could you talk about the different applications, societal applications for your zine work? Yeah.
Oh yeah, like I think that's really really important. So zines, I think originated in activism actually, and then had a big resurgence in like punk culture, with getting out information about bands and music, and also activism. So that's like very much what the space is based in, and why zines are supposed to be accessible and easily recreated and um, reproduced is the word that I should be using here, and all of that sort of stuff. I think that's really great, and I think that zines as an artistic medium are also very good because they're not necessarily capitalism poisoned like a lot of other art mediums functionally have to be in order to make them at all, because everything is very expensive, and it feels as if you need to be making money on your medium to even make it at all. So I think that zines are a really important and great tool for that sort of thing, and also for artistic expression. Like a lot of zines are made as things that you wouldn't necessarily be able to express somewhere else, or like you can't make a book to sell about this, but you can make a zine about pictures of my cat. The most important activism topic of all. But yeah, my local library is really, really supportive of zines and zine culture. We have a huge zine display in our central library, and a librarian specifically dedicated to managing that. And then that also gets distributed to some of the other libraries. One of them is next to a high school, and they do workshops and classes where they teach the high school kids to make zines and to express themselves that way, which I'm really, really happy for. And they get lots of kids involved, which I really love, especially because I'm not terrified of talking to kids, but I don't know how to run a workshop for them in the same way that I do for adults. So it's really great that I've got help there. but yeah, one of the workshops at my Zine Fest last year was an activism workshop and about zines and activism, and we had um, an amazing person from our community, Monica, who was actually in Christchurch for I think just a year, from Chicago, and she talked to us about um, zines being used for refugees in Chicago and how they made a bunch of publications to help people um, who were coming into the community and didn't necessarily have the knowledge of resources or even the language and stuff, how that was really, really helpful for getting these people set up in their new lives in Chicago and what resources they could access and what their rights were. Um, you know, zines are a great medium for that because, again, so easily reproducible and so cheap and easy to distribute to people. Like it's just really, really good.
I'm an art teacher, and I always love getting to the point of a class or a workshop where I get to teach people how to do zines. I always try and work it in somewhere.
Oh yeah, it's
It's
fantastic.
so fun just the way that people's creativity explodes once you teach them about the medium. Um, uh, on the note of like zines being rooted in sort of activist spaces, I think we get the word zine from the term fanzine, and a lot of some of the first zines were like science fiction fanzines about Kirk and Spock erotica. So there's also a very queer history to it as well.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. So like I've seen some conflicting information about where zines originated from because one of my co-organizers found something that suggested that they were being used in activist communities as far back as like the 20s and 30s to distribute.
I mean, if you want to go
Uh,
back super
yeah,
far to like the printing press, pamphlets were sort of
exactly.
the original OG grandfather of zines.
Yeah,
It's always
and
hard to draw a line in the sand and say what's first, but
yeah,
like, yeah.
what's a zine? What constitutes a book, a pamphlet, etc. But yeah, there's like lots of fanzines and stuff. The punk ones, the activism ones, and it's coming from a lot of different quarters. And I think every single one of them is people who are trying to sort of like express themselves in any way that they can and distribute the things that they're saying. And I think that's really cool and important. Um, yeah.
We have another question from Jesse. Do you have any advice for cartoonists interested in starting to do zine fests? I love doing zine fests. There's a local one in Spokane that I do. So,
Yes.
what do you have to
So,
say about this?
um, honestly, despite being a comic artist, all of my zines end up being really text heavy. I don't know why that is. It just happens. um, but for cartoonists, like, I mean, I can't speak to the culture of art and conventions and stuff overseas. New Zealand is a very interesting bubble, I think, because we are very small. Um, we don't have the population density for art festivals in the same way that I know a lot of people in the States do. Um, so we get this weird thing where we've got conventions that are more like for anime and fan media and stuff, and they don't tend to go for original content. Um, we have one major convention here, and there's every single time there is a New Zealand comics table. It is a dedicated one. It is set aside by the guy who runs the con, and it just doesn't get that much interest. And I think something like a zine fest tends to go far better for comic artists. Like we have a huge comic anthology, Battle Mag, who flies up from a different city to mine for our zine fest, and it's like all of these New Zealand comic artists who submit to this anthology and stuff, and they sell at our zine fest. And another magazine, Speak, um, they sell their comics at zine fest, and I think that's a much more sympathetic place for it, because people are a lot more open to personal art and people's creativity and not necessarily buying 5 Dungeon Meshi keychains. That's a little bit bitter of me to say, but like I think zine fests are great because they're artist focused. The only thing with that is that you're probably not going to make much money because zine fests are usually not about making money. But this is sort of the reality, I think, that we all live in as artists working in 2025. So,
In my experience with being a cartoonist who primarily sells at zine fests, just because it's what happens, and they usually are affordable tables. I'm usually very welcomed in those spaces. I have found that like if your work seems too pro or too glossy, there might be a little bit of a disconnect there. Have you experienced that in your neck of the world, Sarah?
oh, yes and no. So, like, some of our artists do show up with larger books and stuff. Like, I've seen people selling books for like $40 or $50. This is New Zealand dollars. I'm not sure how easily that translates to other currencies, but that's a reasonable amount for what the books are. And I don't know that they get that many sales because people are rocking up ready to spend like $5 to $10 on any one thing at these zine fests. And like at the one that I organize, I try to discourage too much expensive merch because A, I want people to be able to afford stuff that's there, and B, you know, if you're coming with $20, I want you to be able to spend that $20 on as many zines as possible and get as much art as possible, not just spend it on one thing, which is still, worth the $20, but yeah, less commercial stuff. So I think that does happen. It's just less sympathetic to zine fests as a vibe. And like, I would really, really love for there to be comic festivals and stuff here. Like, I'm always really jealous hearing about the ones in the States and Canada and how, I think there's even some in Australia actually. We just do not have the population mass to support that here. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure how that would sort of work and sort of like cross pollinate, I guess.
That makes a lot of sense. Do you have any advice on finding zine fests? We've had a little bit of a discussion about like where do you find zine fests? How do you find out that they're happening?
Oh yes. So for mine personally, I put up posters, like we do poster runs and stuff, and like I know there's a few spots in my city where the wall is just papered with posters of gigs and stuff happening. And I think New Zealand is maybe a little strange in this, but a lot of us are still on Facebook and Facebook groups. So there's a few local Facebook groups that always post events happening. There's Instagram. Following a lot of local artists is really good because people will talk about events they're going to or they're tabling at. Um, I know there's a local artist Discord. Uh, and I know that people post in the Cartoonist Co-op Discord. If you're in one of the larger centres, I think people tend to share cons and stuff going on. It's it's kind of hard because it all feels very sort of like grassroots. Like you have to sort of be plugged into a lot of these things. Like in the past, I've also seen, yeah, like Jesse's saying, Indian queer bookshops, which are great. Sometimes cafes also have flyers. I know my local art shop has flyers for events that are happening sometimes. They certainly had them for Zine Fest because they were one of our sponsors. Stuff like that.
That makes a lot of sense. It sounds like something that's very underground. I mean, for lack of a better
Yeah.
term, right? It's very word of mouth driven and very local community driven.
Yes.
How
Yeah,
do
it
you
is.
sort of a follow up question? Where do you find zines? Are there zines online, like zine libraries that you like to reference? Where do you go find your zines?
So I'm not sure about online stuff. because again, as I've mentioned, I'm a very traditional artist and I love picking things up with my hands and looking at them. So as I said, my city library has an enormous zine collection. It used to actually belong to the Zine Fest committee and would sort of rotate around a couple of galleries in the city, which was really nice. Whoever would take custody of it from us because it was too big for any one person. And then the library took it over, which is also really, really great because I've had feedback from the librarians that people will come into the library and see their zines and they'll bring their friends and family and go, look, my work is in the library. And I think that's really important for people to see that their work is important, their voice is worth hearing. So if you have a local library you can convince to take zines, please do so. But I know in my city we've also got a comic shop right on Supersound that sells zines on behalf of people. Small comic shops, and I think they're also a record store. So again, we're getting into the sort of like underground uh, gallery artist space tends to be the most sympathetic to zines and where you'd go to, if not find them, to ask people where to find them. Yeah, so unfortunately, one thing about zine culture is that you have to talk to people a lot. So it's not the best for introverts, but we do try.
No. I read once that there used to be like zine distros that would have zines that were sort of like catalogs. Do you find that does that still exist at all, or is that sort of a thing of the past?
I haven't seen one in a while, but again, like this is the population of New Zealand is 5 million people. Like we're really, really small compared to a lot of people. Like my city has, I can't remember how many. It's like I'm in the second largest city in the country, and we have a few 100,000 people here. And we still have an amazing turnout for Zine Fest, but like it's just so small in the grand scheme of things. And I know one of the other major cities used to have a zine review, which was really cool. Like you could send your zines in, and they would put out their own zine at the Zine Fest every year, where they would review other people's zines, and you could see what else was going on around the country and stuff. But that hasn't happened for a little while. Or the same with there's one guy, Bryce Galloway, who is actually a university lecturer. So I think he talks about zines in his university stuff, but he has an ongoing zine series where he'll talk about this sort of stuff. I think he's into like the 50s now in series. It's stuff where it's just people who have been plugged into the scene for a long time who can sort of like advise on this, talk about this, which is really cool. And um, one thing with zine organizing is that it's all very volunteer based, and it's fantastic when people put in the effort, but they have to want to put in the effort. So like it's very luck of the draw if stuff like that exists, I think, because no one's making any money, no one's getting a lot out of it. It's just pure love of the game, I think.
If somehow there isn't a zine community in your area, how would you recommend starting one?
Um, that is a really good question. I think probably the best way from an events organizing perspective would be to get other people involved that will want to do it. So, like, gather friends who want to do it. So, you've got a base to start from, and, make your zines, get prepared, and then advertise a lot and hope people come. And the thing with event organizing as well is that um, the first year is going to be hard. The second year might also be hard. Things take a while to build, and the most important thing is that you continue to show up. So with my Zine Fest, like 10, 15 years ago, it was being run in a tiny little gallery that's about the size of a classroom. There wasn't very much room for people. It was very underground. It was really cool. Really changed my life. And it continued like that for a few years. The organization kept changing hands as to who was running it. It was really, I don't know, really sort of like up in the air whether it would happen each year. And then COVID happened and it really knocked everything out because we had pretty strict lockdowns here and venue limits on how close people could be to one another, and it just wasn't feasible to run Zine Fest. I wasn't in charge of it at this point, mind you. So I got knocked out for a few years. And then one of my co-organizers, Maya Templar, who is a comic artist in Australia at the moment, definitely look up her work. She's fantastic and she's very, very passionate about zines. Um, she was really, really determined to do Zine Fest. She dragged it together in 2 weeks, having not had a Zine Fest in about 3 years at this point. Put it together at a bar. She dragged together all of the people who were going to be tabling there, prizes, which were like really cheaply made medals for the people who won prizes. And like dragged this together on like the budget of a paperclip and a dream and ran that, and there were about 20 people tabling. And then the year after that it was at the library, the central library in town, and there were like 25, 30 people. And then I got involved and she managed to get us the city art gallery to donate their space, which meant we also got a lot of foot traffic in, and we partnered with a literature festival, um, which also, got us a lot of foot traffic and also legitimacy for our artists, which I think is really important. And we did the art gallery 2 years, so last year and the year before that. And last year, where it was basically me solo running it because Maya moved to Australia, we had 90 people tabling, which felt crazy, up from a few years ago, 20 people tabling. We had 2,000 people through on the day. Everyone had a fantastic day. There were people flying from around the country to come to our Zine Fest, which is crazy because nobody flies to my city for art events. Um, this year we're going to have 2 days because it was such a huge success. So it's just sort of sticking at it, getting in touch with all of your local community. So I get my Zine Fest funded through, there's a city council initiative for creative projects. So we get funding that pays for our tables and it pays for our advertising. It would also pay for our venue space, but the venue space has been donated, which is really nice. I've talked to a bunch of local businesses and they sponsor us and give us prizes because, it's focusing on the fact that it's, trying to support art in the community and an entry level sort of space for artists. And it's all very community support oriented. Lots and lots of people want to help. So, again, it's just a matter of talking to people, getting that community support, and sticking at it for years where you're not being paid and it's a lot of stress. But like event organizing and stuff like that, in my opinion, it isn't hard. It's just sending about 11 million emails to people. So if you can do that, you can organize a Zine Fest and set this up in your community. So yeah, Adrian here is saying, in my experience, libraries have been great friends of zine communities, which yeah is also my experience. My local library is very supportive. The librarians come down and purchase zines for their collection. They have the zine library at the library, and they'll advertise for us and host our workshops. So it's really cool.
The Zine Fest in Spokane is also hosted at the local library, so yeah, that rings super true to me.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah. Uh, we should probably start wrapping up soon. We're not quite at that 80-minute mark yet, but as a sort of follow-up question, kind of going down this line, if somebody wanted to learn more about zines, what sort of things would you recommend to them?
God, that's a really, really good question. I'm not sure, honestly, because, obviously there's a lot of debate online about what constitutes a zine. And, I think I mentioned a while ago, a lot of people call big, um, high budget art books and anthologies zines as well. Um, I think it's just a case of, local community and looking into the history of things. So maybe not so much looking at modern resources and talking, but your library books, you're talking about the history of zines from like the 70s, the 80s, or before and stuff would be a good base for learning about zines and their origins as a medium before you start getting into what they look like today, I think. It's not a very helpful answer, but
I feel that I get that. A book that I read back in college that I really loved was Notes from the Underground, which was a history of zines and alternative culture in the America, and that's where I learned a whole bunch of things. But
oh, that's super
the
cool.
resources out there are sporadic and poorly categorized, is what I've found.
Oh yes, I fully believe that. Honestly,
You really have to like
uh,
dig and search to learn about zines, which is part of the fun, I suppose.
yeah, yeah. Um, and I think that also comes from the fact that they've come from so many different spaces and mediums, and um, I feel like it's possibly even like almost retrospective looking back to qualify some of these things as zines, because I'm sure a lot of people were just trying to get their art and their writing and what have you out in whatever medium they could. And um, photocopiable booklets are, very easy to make and do. And, the term zine comes from magazine. It's just sort of, um, following on from larger mediums, as an example, in a very sort of like homemade sense, which I think is fun and interesting in of itself.
For sure, for sure. We have officially hit that 80-minute mark.
There we go.
Sarah, do you have any last things you want to say to us as a group? Where can we find your work?
Okay, so I'm Plaid Cushion on most social media. I post art very sporadically on Instagram, mostly finished stuff. I post works in progress, to be honest, also very sporadically, but more often on my Tumblr or maybe my Blue Sky, so that'd be where you'd want to find me.
Woo! Heck yeah! Thank you for telling us. Yeah, I'm gonna definitely follow you on Blue Sky. That's my next thing that I'm doing today.
Thank you, and thank you
Yeah,
for facilitating this, and thank you everyone for coming.
yeah, definitely. This was a wonderful little workshop. It was great getting to chat about zines with you.
Yeah, likewise.
I for one, am super excited to start getting more experimental with my zine making process. I feel like I've been very stuck in the fold and staple and the eightfold tradition, and your stuff has been super inspiring to see. So thank you for taking the time to tell us about it.
Oh, I'm super glad. Please post everything that you make in the co-op. I would love to see it. Genuinely, if anyone makes any zines, advanced or otherwise, I would love to be tagged. I really, really love seeing zines and what people make. Um,
Maybe
yeah,
we'll ask for a zine share channel in the co-op or something.
that would be cool.
That would be cool. Yeah. As a final reminder, Jesse just dropped the link for us. There's a survey. We would love to hear what everyone who showed up here attended, and it's gonna be cool. Gonna be a cool time. Thank you. Woohoo, Jesse. How do I wrap this up? What do I do, Jesse?
I'm glad I have my mic on. You can go ahead and stop recording. And thank you also, Sarah and Nanette, for running today. This was really fantastic.
I found it. I found the button. All right, stopping recording now. Goodbye, people in the future. See ya.